All right, finishing up chapter 9. Rescuer to coach. Ted drew a third line in the sand. At the top end of this line, he wrote R, and at the bottom, C-O. He then turned to me and said, one of the biggest temptations of people who want to help others, to make a contribution in this world, is to fall into the victim orientation role of rescuer. It's one thing to lend a helping hand when someone has fallen, but it's quite another to assume you have to walk on his or her behalf. A rescuer sees the other person as a needy and powerless victim. Rescuers breed dependence. They thrive on the need to be needed by a victim. A coach, on the other hand, remembers that other people are creative, resourceful, whole beings capable of creating their heart's desires. Again, whether they know it or not, and whether they act like it or not. A coach assumes others are responsible for their life, choices, and experiences. A rescuer is attached to outcomes and sees it as his responsibility to fix the victim. But a coach is not attached to any particular outcome. Rather, the coach serves and supports a creator in manifesting his or her desired outcomes. On the intrapersonal level, if you perceive that someone is trying to be a rescuer or to fix you or your situation, the way to make shift happen is to thank them for their concern and to own your responsibility as a creator. You can then invite them to help you as a coach if it feels right. I asked, so what can I do when I want to help someone without becoming a rescuer myself? It's so easy for me to take on that role. Be curious. Ask questions, answered Sophia. A coach's major contribution is in the questions he asks. Rescuers have a tendency to tell others what they should do, giving advice or instruction. Coaches make occasional suggestions, but without concerning themselves with whether other people follow their recommendations. Great coaches ask great questions that help creators gain clarity about what they want. Questions also help creators accurately assess their current reality, decide what needs to be done, and commit to the actions that support them in moving toward fulfilling their dreams. When we were exploring the nature of the victim yesterday, you might remember that every victim has a dream that somehow has been denied or thwarted, said Ted. One of the most powerful and helpful ways to shift from rescuer to coach is to ask the other person what it is that she wants, Sophia added. Help her identify the dream that has been denied or thwarted. What do you really want here? If you could have or do or be anything your heart desired right now, what would that look like? Who and how do you choose to be or to respond in this situation? These are all questions that help a person shift into her own creator orientation. Another great way to contribute is to help someone see the gifts and lessons a persecutor has made available to them, Sophia continued. You can do that by asking her the same sort of questions I raised a minute ago when you were working to make your own shift from the persecutor to the challenger role. You might ask, what is the lesson this person or situation is bringing into your life? How and what can you learn from this? What's the gift hidden in the situation, no matter how difficult it appears? The sun was beginning its slow descent toward the horizon. Our shadows encircled Ted's sand drawing, which now looks something like an asterisk. As I studied the crossroads in the sand, I felt Ted's hand on my shoulder. There you have it, David. All your choices are right here at your feet. Here you can see all the roles of the victim orientation with its dreaded drama triangle, as well as the creator orientation and the empowerment dynamic. My challenge to you, my friend, is to stay awake to the choices you make every day and to the relationships you cultivate. Then Ted pulled something from his shirt pocket, a small pendant of some sort, strung on brown twine. As Ted held it out, I saw that it was in the shape of a tiny sand dollar. This is for you, David. It's to remind you of all you now know. In this way, it offers a source of protection. See the center? It's an asterisk, like the one in the sand. a symbol of the choice you always have before you, victim or creator. Ted looked at me for a long moment before reaching over my head and placing the amulet around my neck. Chapter 10, A Fond Farewell. Stunned, I looked down at the pendant. In the late afternoon light, the small reminder glowed slightly against my shirt. Just then, Sophia pulled a similar pendant from her sweatshirt and held it up for me to see. My heart felt suddenly larger, as if it were expanding to contain the moment. The two of them had given me so much, their wisdom, their experience, their close attention. They had come near when everyone and everything else in my life seemed to have fallen away. Ted and Sophia had listened and offered a new perspective. Most of all, they had helped point a way forward for my life when I had felt so stuck. They had laughed with me and cared. I looked up at the sky. Such friends, such sky. Something else inside let go just then. Like a prisoner stepping into the light of freedom, I let the tears flow. Emotions are a measure of how important something is to you, David, said Ted. I'm happy to welcome your tears of release. I trust you'll take what you've learned these past 2 days and continue growing in that new knowledge. You seem to have found what you were searching for when you came to the beach. I found more than I can say, much more. My mind was whirling, imagining all the ways that I could begin applying TED in my life. The sunshine felt warmer. The sounds of the shore were filled with meaning. Sacred moments passed. I stammered. I can already think of so many people and places where TED can make things better, not only in my own life, but for other people too. I want to practice what I've learned here with my associates at work. I want to share it with these newlyweds I know and my sister's family, in fact, everybody's family. Boy, I wish I had known about this way of being while I was growing up. I'll bet young people would really appreciate TED's help. There are so many areas this could apply to. The possibilities are endless. Ted laughed. Hang on, David, slow down a bit. It's true, there's not a single aspect of the human experience to which TED, the empowerment dynamic, does not apply. Take it a step at a time and one aspect of your life at a time. Eventually, you will find that much of your life has been influenced by TED. But those explorations must wait for another day. The sun will be going down soon, and it's time to call it a day. David, Sophia said, I'd love to stay in touch and be of support in whatever ways I can, as a friend, as a coach, and maybe from time to time as a challenger. Your personal growth with my reward will be my reward. It's no accident that Ted brought us together. We've been doing similar paths, and I know there are things we can learn from each other. That would be great, Sophia. Thanks, I said. I saw that Ted had closed his eyes, and Sophia did the same, so I followed suit. Let's be silent for a moment, said Ted. I want to express my gratitude for our meeting and for this work and way of being that has been entrusted to us. Let the sounds outside wash over us. And so I did. I gave thanks for all that had happened, for my new connections and the new sense of hope that was now coursing through me. I drank in the sands and the sounds of the waves, breathed in the smell of the ocean, and let the warmth of the day sink in. And after a few minutes, someone gave my hand a squeeze, and I opened my eyes. It was Ted. He had taken both my hand and Sophia's. He looked deeply at her and then at me. I felt a little funny then, as if Ted were looking into and beyond me. It reminded me of the way my dad looked at me when I graduated from college. I had known then that he saw exactly what I was made of, that he loved me for all that I was, and even for all that I wasn't. I smiled back. Until next time, Ted gave us both a hug. Such a warm soul. I felt like my heart might bubble over. Sophia turned, grabbed my hands, and gave me an exuberant squeeze as if she were a long-lost sister returning home. I closed my eyes and relaxed into the moment. What a blessing to feel this way, I thought to myself. After a long minute, I opened my eyes and turned to Ted. Ted wasn't there. He was sauntering down the shore, his walking stick making little marks in the sand. They looked like little periods punctuating the end of this 2-day conversation. He turned back to us, grinned, and waved goodbye. Sophia laughed. He has a way of doing that. One thing I can predict, this won't be the last time you see Ted. She reached out and touched my pendant. I liked having it there, resting over my heart. We stood for a few minutes, looking out at the waves together, and then Sophia said, well, time to head home. We said our goodbyes, and as Sophia was leaving, she called out over her shoulder, I'll email you after dinner. Walking up the beach toward the car, I took my time. There was the bluff and the path where Ted and I had made our way down here both yesterday and today. The sun had dipped lower now, and the clouds had taken on a pink glow. Scanning the top of the bluff, I could just make out the bench where I had first come to sit and think and write in my journal. How different I felt now. Thank you, Ted, for introducing me to TED, the empowerment dynamic, I said aloud, smiling. Thank you very much. That is the end of the book, and I'm going to conclude with a note from the author. It's just short, so let's end with this. A note from the author. Writers write what they most need to learn. At least this writer does. During the writing of this book, I was presented with many opportunities to cast off victimhood, reconsidering and applying TED, the empowerment dynamic, in a new and exciting ways. My personal and professional life constantly urges me to observe and understand the human experience more deeply. As a teacher, facilitator, coach, and consultant, my passion has long been to help improve people's individual and collective capacity for living and working together. As I live out this passion, I've come to realize that the most fundamental relationship, the one at the heart of all others, is the relationship to ourselves and our life experience. Each day I awaken to a range of choices that will shape my reality and my life. Some days are better than others, like the weather outside my window. Some mornings bring sun and clarity. Others seem dusted with a gray haze. Like Sophia, I'm still living my way into what it means to be rooted in the creator orientation. So I try to stay alert, ready to welcome the challengers and coaches that make life a rich learning experience. And this little book is part of autobiography and part fiction. Which parts are which? In the end, of no real consequence. The really important questions are these. Where do you see yourself in the story? What kinds of choices are you making? And what is the baby step that will make a shift happen in your life today? May we individually live into our own answers while seeing all those around us as the creators they actually are. By offering our gifts to others as coaches and constructive challengers, we can create a world that works for all of us. For ultimately, that is the true power of TED. Thank you so much for joining me on this Read Aloud.